Olá. That's all the Portuguese I think I know. Thank you all for having me. I apologize for not knowing more Portuguese. As they indicated, I am from the United States, the state of Florida, but not Miami. Today, I'm going to talk about the use of technology in criminal investigations. As you may know, in the United States, the majority of our cases, we utilize some form of technology. May that be a body camera, an in-car video, but we utilize those in almost every criminal prosecution that we do in the United States. As I said, a lot of the times it may be a body camera video or an in-car video that's used. In my current role in the prosecutor's office, I oversee all the prosecutors in Escambia County, Florida. And so what that means is I oversee prosecutions that involve murder, homicide, rape, carjacking, all the way down to the theft at your local grocery store. But in order for us to be able to get those videos into court, we must also comport with what the law says. So we have to follow case law as well as statutes and the Constitution, just as you all do here in Brazil. There are two main ways in which we are allowed to get video evidence into any criminal case. The first is what we call the pictorial testimonial method. Simply meant, all that means is if you witness an incident take place, you are allowed to say that that video shows and depicts a fair and accurate depiction of what you observed. Essentially, you have personal knowledge as to what that video shows. And if you have personal knowledge, you are allowed to testify and say that that video is fair and accurate. And once that's done, that video is allowed to be admitted. A lot of times, though, what will happen is you may have a security video, right? And you weren't there when that video recorded someone committing a theft or a robbery at that store. And that way, we then utilize what's called the silent witness theory. This is probably more so where technology is at issue. Because in this kind of a situation, you didn't actually see the incident take place. What you're testifying is that the video, in and of itself, is reliable. And that way, we are now talking about the process. So we're talking about the placement of that video system, what video system is utilized, and how that video was then created. So we are relying upon the process of the making of the video and not necessarily your personal knowledge of that video. To illustrate the point, I'm going to talk about a couple of different cases. This is the case of State of Florida versus an individual by the name of Kevon Terrius Wilson. Now, in this particular case, law enforcement was responding to an armed disturbance. Essentially, what happened is you had a guy who showed up at another guy's house, and when he showed up, he armed himself with a 22 caliber rifle, and he went there to commit a murder. Then, while he's trying to fight with the individual, he can't get the firearm, the rifle, to work. So you'll see in the video, there'll be a female in the video. He tells his girlfriend to bring him a 40 caliber handgun that was also inside of the car. While all of this is taking place, a witness is called 911 law enforcement. And the video that you're going to see is going to be the in-car video from that law enforcement officer arriving on that scene. Then I'm going to show you another video. That video is going to be a body camera video worn by that law enforcement officer who also responded to the scene. Now, essentially, Kevon Terrius Wilson would be charged with attempted murder, and because he was a convicted felon in the United States, he's not allowed to possess a firearm. So he would also be charged with possession of a firearm. Now, prior to the case going to trial, what Mr. Wilson tried to say is he did not possess that firearm. He tried to say he wasn't the one with the firearm, but rather it was the victim. Through the utilization of video evidence, we were able to show that, in fact, Kevon Terrius Wilson was the individual who was in possession of a firearm.
One for again tonight, sir.
You want intensive?
Tempo.
10 Mark, show me 1033 for 907 West at intensive.
Drop it! Back up. On your face. On your face. Now. Back up. 140. Black male, multiple gunshot wounds.
Now, if I were to ask you, were you able to see a firearm in Mr. Wilson's hand right now? How many of you would be able to raise your hand and say you saw the firearm in his hand? Probably not that many of you. But I'll show you another video, and this is a video in which we slow down the video, we zoom in a bit, and then you should be able to tell that Mr. Wilson was, in fact, in possession of a firearm. Now, seeing that video, how many of you would be able to say that you saw the firearm in his hand? Exactly. And so that's kind of the point. The first video was his body camera video at real-time speed. The second video was from his in-car camera. And when we slowed that video down and we added the boxes around the firearm in the defendant's hand, it made it much more apparent that he possessed a firearm. Now, this is allowed in the United States because we didn't add anything necessarily to the video. We just utilized the boxes to highlight what was already shown in the video. And we slowed it down and we zoomed it in as if you just put a magnifier on top of the photo. That would be allowed in the United States because we didn't actually alter the video. We just enhanced it such that you were better able to know what to focus on in the video. This is the case of state of Florida versus an individual by the name of Marvin Lucky. I may talk a little bit as we go through the videos here because there isn't going to be audio. But let me back up to Mr. Wilson just to tell you, he was prosecuted, he went to trial, and he went to prison for 15 years in the state of Florida. As it relates to Mr. Lucky is going to be prosecuted for the theft of a bracelet. This bracelet cost about $3,000 US, which I think is about $15,000 or $16,000. I'm going to mispronounce it in the Brazilian real. I've sped this video up just for the sake of time. Essentially, you're going to see Mr. Lucky come into frame. It's going to be the African-American male wearing a gray shirt. You should be able to see him over in the corner with the store clerk. Essentially, what he's doing is he's talking with that store clerk about different bracelets. They've now gone to the other side of the register, and essentially, right now, he's looking at about 4 different bracelets. You can't tell from this angle, but what Mr. Lucky actually does, and you'll be able to tell from another video, what he actually does is he's going to pick up one of the 4 bracelets. He's going to take it into his left hand. He's going to cough, and then he's going to put it in his pocket. Now, if I were to ask you, how many of you saw Mr. Lucky actually take that bracelet and put it in his pocket? Raise your hand. You all got some good eyes up here. So we add the boxes so that you know exactly where to look. You know who Mr. Lucky is, you know where to focus. And now, so I'll tell you, when Mr. Lucky stole this bracelet, the store clerk, they didn't realize he committed the theft. It was only that night when they did their inventory and they realized they were missing a $3,000 bracelet that they took the time to go back through all of the video from that store, and then they were able to track it to Mr. Lucky. This will be a different angle. You should be able to see him take that bracelet from his right hand, put it in his left hand, and then put it in his pocket. He still has it in his hand. He's going to lift up his shirt, and then he's going to put it in his pocket. This will be the last angle I'll show you. And the reason we show this angle is because it comes over the top of Mr. Lucky. And you can see that he takes the bracelet, he puts it in his hand, and he never returns that bracelet to the counter. Now, let me ask you, on that first video, raise your hand if on the very first video you knew that Mr. Lucky stole a bracelet on the very first video. Now, let me ask you on the very last video, raise your hand if you were able to tell that Mr. Lucky stole a bracelet. Exactly. And that's the point of utilizing technology. When we're able to utilize that technology to put those boxes on there and to zoom in on what takes place, it helps the jury focus in on what is critical in any given event. And if we are able to utilize either the pictorial method or the silent witness method, we're then allowed to get those videos in. Now, one question some people often ask is, well, if they didn't know when the bracelet got stolen, how were they able to identify Mr. Lucky as the person who stole the bracelet? Now, at a trial in the United States, we're not allowed to necessarily utilize facial recognition because it's not currently at this stage, it's not yet reliable enough. And then there are certain issues based upon different demographics and races. So you're not really able to utilize it at the point of a trial. But we were able to utilize the facial recognition to give us an idea of to whom the individual may have been in that video. So essentially, we got 6 different individuals that could have been the perpetrator. So then we took those 6 individuals, we presented it to the store clerk, and he identified Mr. Lucky as being the person who committed the theft. So we're able to utilize the video, a photo lineup to identify Mr. Lucky as the person who committed the theft, and Mr. Lucky also went to trial. When Mr. Lucky went to trial, he was found guilty by a jury of 6 individuals, and he is now in prison for 5 years. At this point, I'm happy to take any questions about any of those cases or how we were able to utilize video evidence in trials in the United States. You don't have to have questions, but you're welcome to if you do. Okay.
Hi.
Hello.
This is the reality of Florida. Is it the same reality of the other states, or it's similar but have some different aspects?
That's an excellent question. It is generally the same in every state in the United States. So the only difference is going to be based upon the jurisdiction. Some jurisdictions may not have body cameras and some may not have in-car. But if they do, they generally have to follow the same guidelines on getting that video evidence admitted into a criminal case. I think they just all want to go to lunch.
Pode. Bom dia. Eu queria saber se esse uso da câmera
Oh, I have to put in.
corporal. Tá.
Good morning. I'm connected. I believe so. I can hear her say hello, testing.
Se o uso da câmera corporal diminuiu a violência policial lá na Flórida.
She's not translating yet.
That's a great question. The question is, has body cam decreased police violence, if I'm correct? I wouldn't necessarily say that it has decreased police violence, but it certainly has made us more aware of whenever there is police misconduct. To that point, part of my job is, so in that very first one, that was an officer-involved shooting. So part of my job is to review any officer-involved shooting and make sure it is a justified shoot. So in that particular case, it was kind of easy for us to justify the shooting because we had that suspect on video with the firearm, and I had a witness who said that that suspect showed up at that location with 2 firearms trying to kill someone else.